Hello and welcome to Scoundrels Inc., a Star Wars podcast about Star Wars. Today we are continuing our ride along through the saga films. We are going to be discussing everyone's favorite saga film, The Attack of the Clones, Star Wars Episode 2. I know for most of you it's up there with Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, so I cannot wait to get into this one. I might convert some of you, you know?
We'll see. It's a mighty tall task. We should mention, I don't know if anyone has noticed on the video side of things, but we do have a guest, a special guest with us, Sean.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, his name is David. That's it.
How's it going?
Just David.
Hello,
It's
David.
like-
How are you, David?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, you're a big Star Wars fan, as I understand it, or did I get that wrong?
Well, you're about 50% of the way there. I watched the original trilogy as a child, and I do remember seeing The Revenge of the Sith in theaters and thinking that it was pretty good. And that's in combination with me and your co-host Kevin's love of the Knights of the Old Republic video games from BioWare. And then also I'm an immense fan of the Lego Star Wars sets.
Uh-huh.
And that is going to be my resume as far as things are concerned. I believe that the intention was to bring up the group's consensus on Attack of the Clones by having somebody on board who is basically not terribly familiar with it. And so here I am.
Yeah. So here he is. We're gonna have a great time.
So you love this movie?
No. Love's a strong word. As I recently became aware, the Jedi are encouraged to love.
You just learned this. You just learned that?
But unfortunately, well, yeah, I did just learn. I thought they weren't supposed to do that. But, and you can tell with instructions like that, it'd be kind of easy for Anakin to get confused and fall in love with Padme.
Well, passion is forbidden.
Yeah.
Compassion is encouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just one of those things that just speaks to a baseline disconnect from reality.
Yeah,
So,
much of the script. So
yeah, much like where we are now. So,
hey, Frank, where do we cut in the title? You got the title in there.
I already actually, don't worry, I already got it in there.
Okay, cool, great.
That's what she said. Anyway, so normally when we start talking about these films, I like to, ask, when did we first see this movie? How did we first see it? What do we remember from it? And I think, let's start with our guest here about what you can recall about seeing Attack of the Clones for the first time, and what is kind of your personal history with the movie, if you can recall.
yeah. So the first and only time I watched Attack of the Clones, I was in a mall in Japan.
In Japan.
And I was waiting for some paperwork to go through for a mobile phone. And I was in the electronics department, and they had a television in which they were advertising the wonders of 3D television. And for display, they were playing Attack of the Clones. And I remember watching a good 45 minutes of it in Japanese and distorted because it was a 3D television.
And you didn't have...
I didn't have the goggles. So I was just watching a very distorted Japanese version of Return of the Clones.
Verbally, it was in Japanese, or
Yes.
Okay, wow, okay.
So, and which I don't really speak. So
Great. Do you remember which 45 minutes?
yes, it was the scene, and I was talking about this with Frank. A scene where they were in a forging, like an ironworks mine.
Great.
And
one of the worst 8 minutes of the movie.
Oh,
and they
okay.
were building things, and they were jumping. It was like a platformer type of thing, and
So you saw like the last part of the movie, basically. It sounds
essentially. But now we are also approaching the limits of my.
This is fantastic. But
All right, so I believe, and I'm going to set this up now so we can return to this later.
Okay.
I believe this film has some of the best 8 minutes of Star Wars.
Interesting.
And by that, I don't mean it's the best 8 minutes. I don't mean that there's not another 8 minutes somewhere that is better. I mean, it's got some of the most revolutionary 8 minutes of Star Wars, some of the most revelatory 8 minutes of Star Wars,
Okay.
and an 8 minutes of Star Wars that changes and really hammers home the point that the Jedi in this era are flawed,
Yeah.
and that is why the Jedi Order must end, and that is why they fail to stop the Revenge of the Sith.
Is this all the same 8 minute?
This is all the same 8 minutes.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess I'll talk about the first time I recall seeing this movie. It was in the theater at my Fort C where I saw The Phantom Menace. I don't recall who I saw it with for the first time, but I know for the second time, I definitely saw it by myself because I walked to the theater from my house to the theater, which was like a good mile and a half or something like that. And I think it was on a weekend. The movie had been out for a couple weeks, and I wanted to go see it again because I absolutely needed to see Yoda again in the fight scene. Because when I first saw this movie, the Yoda fight sequence, which I wasn't fully prepared to see, it was one thing to see a digital Yoda, but it was another thing to see him wield a lightsaber and fight Count Dooku and do all this flipping and jumping and stuff. And I just thought it was the best thing I had ever seen in my entire life. I was still a little, a sophomore in high school, I think. So it was extremely entertaining to me and just mind-blowing. So if for anything, I had to go to the theater just to see that sequence. I do also remember the first time I watched this movie in the theater that when Anakin starts to slaughter the Sand People or Tusken Raiders, I remember the music starts to kick in, it starts with the violin starts coming in, and some guy in the theater goes, "Oh shit, here he goes!" Just like out in the theater, I was like, it always sticks with me every time I watch that part of the movie. I don't have as many distinct nostalgic feelings with this movie as I do with The Phantom Menace. It's 3 years later from when I saw Phantom Menace, but I still remember being very, very hyped for this movie because this was the first script that I found leaked. There was a leaked version of this script out there, and I did not know if it was legit or not. And I would only find out later until I saw the movie that it was somewhat legit, or at least someone leaked parts of it, because I remember reading about Geonosis and Camino and the battle, the arena battle, and everything happening on Camino. I mean, that was all very weird to kind of read because I just couldn't visualize what George was putting on the paper. Mm-hmm. So it was very hard for me to interpret what does all this looks like, which kind of speaks to the genius of George Lucas in terms of how literally when they filmed all those scenes on Camino, it was just blue screen and Ewan McGregor, right? So it's like, how do you even envision that? It's not going to look anything like, in my mind at least, to what George puts on the screen. But I just remember poring over this, what I assumed was a leaked script, and I remember reading the crawl, which, by the way, the crawl it's probably the worst crawl of all the movies. It is political once again.
The crawl is one of the worst 8 minutes of this movie.
Okay. We're just using the 8 minute thing a lot.
That's my framing for this movie. I'm hoping the analytics pick it up as Star Wars Episode 8 because apparently our Star Wars Episode 8 content does really well on the film.
Yeah, people love to point out how much they dislike the movie. And the people who like the movie, they just click like. They just click like.
They're
like, yeah, I like that.
They're like, yeah.
Everybody else who dislikes it is like, no, I got to let you know how much I hate it. And so they're the ones that leave the comments. So that's how I've learned to balance the two.
Now, you were a sophomore in high school when you saw this.
Yeah.
Okay. So now your age is finally revealed on the show.
Sure.
Yeah.
I thought it was revealed last week when I don't know. I didn't watch
last week because I wasn't here.
See, there you go.
And I didn't
watch.
Well, I didn't.
You would have watched an enjoyable episode. I think it was one of our. It's probably
You're right. You're right. But I don't like.
You would have certainly watched enjoyable 8 minutes.
But I don't like Phantom Menace.
Well, you should have said that on the show last week, but you weren't here. So
Kevin,
moving on.
Did Kevin not read my statement?
He did.
Great.
But it was only in reference to Ben Quadraneros.
Yeah, fuck him. No, I'm kidding. I like Phantom Menace. It's not my favorite.
Sure.
It's in my top 15 Star Wars films.
That's excellent. Excellent ranking.
Yeah.
When's the first time you saw Attack of the Clones? Do you remember that?
It would have been 2002.
Okay.
Same as you.
Yeah.
Except I was 11.
Like
except I
how?
was
Like how did you remember? Like
I was 11. I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember going to see Phantom Menace. I don't remember going to see Attack of the Clones. But here's what I can tell you. Growing up, Attack of the Clones was one of my favorite Star Wars films.
Mm-hmm.
And,
mine as well, yeah.
And a lot of that is due to this 8 minutes. As I've gotten older, this 8 minutes I keep referencing, right?
Yeah. What is that about?
So as I've gotten older, I realize there are lots of other 8-minute segments that I could cut from this film.
Okay.
I think this film is too long.
It's like 220, I think.
As an adult. Right, but I don't think there's 220
Yeah.
worth of good content.
No movie. Yeah.
Sure.
I believe Roger Ebert had the same point.
It probably did.
It's too long.
Too long.
That being said, I think that there are a lot of amazing parts of this film.
Sure.
I'm not going to go into those yet. We're going to talk about that 8 minutes coming up. Coming up short. After the break, we're going to talk about what is the best 8 minutes of Star Wars. Does this lightsaber fight hold up? And do you hate sand?
We're also eager for you to leave in the comments below your favorite 8 minutes of this episode.
Yeah, or your favorite 8 minutes of Star Wars, period.
Sure. Something 8-minute related.
Oh,
Yeah. Can you last 8 minutes?
That's okay. Well,
I mean, yeah, right? I mean, that would be weird.
Who can't?
who can, man?
Yeah.
Like, jeez.
Yeah, of course I can. Anyways, so David, have you now seen this full movie?
No.
Which is why we asked him to come on the show, because we're going to talk about certain aspects of this movie, and I think David might have some questions.
I think you may be spoiled, actually, the two of you, because you, in my minor work producing this podcast, I can't help but notice that we've got really the Encyclopedia Britannica, or let's say Encyclopedia Star Warsica up here.
Sure.
Or Wikipedia, right? That's
Yeah, there it is. That's
Okay,
what they call it.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, he knows
So
it.
we've got the guys who've got Wikipedia, all four of them. And so there are questions probably afloat that don't get voiced because they're taken for granted by experts. And it's not always amongst experts that the very clear information might be hiding. So, how often do you get to explain Star Wars stuff to a layman?
Well,
That's
as
true.
you know,
That's true.
I'm known many places on the internet as Star Wars Explained.
Okay.
Wait,
Yeah.
no, that's the other guy.
That's the other
sorry.
guy, yeah.
Who explains Star Wars?
Yeah, that's his
So
job.
it's not just a clever name.
No.
He actually does that?
He actually
All right,
does
cool.
it.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'll go to him then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm all right.
You can go there later.
But my question is, so in the Harry Potter franchise, they have a word called the Muggles.
yeah.
So, if I have somebody who's not, let's say, indoctrinated into this Harry Potter universe, we would refer to them as Muggles. Is there a vocabulary word in the Star Wars universe to identify people who are not informed? I'm willing to call myself ignorant. I don't view that as being a slur. I mean, you can call me ignorant if you want, but if there is a in-joke,
Don't.
you don't call us
I-
Jar Jars. You don't call us.
We say jizz whalers.
Jizz whalers, as in like, in reference to what exactly?
Well, David, I'm not sure. You know what?
Excellent follow-up
You know what?
question.
Hold on. I think I just thought of another great episode for the next time Brandon and Kevin aren't here.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna give him Star Wars vocabulary words and see if he can
Define them?
define them.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
So
Let
what-
us know if you want to see that in the comments below.
So David, what do you think a jizz whaler is? I will tell you, it's not dirty.
Okay, so I think you have the sperm whaler, right? And so it's kind of like a dirty version of the sperm whaler, right?
So a jizz whaler is someone who performs jizz music.
Which is like jazz music.
No, it's completely different. They changed a letter.
A vowel, no less.
Yeah, a vowel.
This is completely
Yeah.
different.
So
All right.
the Cantina Band, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
the
those are jizz whalers.
jizz whalers.
Yeah.
And now, why is it exactly that you would endow?
He just likes saying
I just
jizz
like
whalers.
saying jizz
He
whaler.
just
I
really
think it's
likes
hilarious.
any
So-
excuse to say this.
So that wasn't even really an answer to my
No.
question. Was
No.
it? Okay, I see.
Which is to say, I don't think there is one
No.
to say.
I mean, in high school, I would have just said,
fucking loser.
normal person.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll take your cue. You guys are in charge, so I'll just call myself a normal person.
Yeah.
And we'll just say that I'm just not like you. So now,
yeah.
that said, what is the first? I mean, let's say that there was a key takeaway and why this particular. There's like 9 of these movies. Is there a key element? It could be the 8 minutes that you talk about. It could be something else. Is there a key thing that makes this movie particularly important in the 9-movie saga that this develops into?
Yes. I want to hear Frank first, though.
Yeah, why this movie I feel is important to the saga is it starts to show the relationship between Anakin and Palpatine and what his attitude is with his Jedi training and how he kind of views at least Obi-Wan and then I guess in this movie, a lesser extent, the Council. You start to see the beginnings of the Clone Wars and how Palpatine uses this period of time to gain even more control within the Republic, and so it sets up a lot of things in motion in terms of what would come to fruition in the original trilogy with the Galactic Empire and everything like that. So it is a pivotal point. For the Star Wars galaxy as a whole, but also really, I guess, kind of the start, more or less, of Anakin's destiny, his path of destiny to fall to the dark side. And you see all this, the makings of those seeds planted here and how they start to sprout up in different areas, where his arrogance or his love for Padme especially, and how that's viewed as something that's not exactly encouraged, although he kind of has a loophole within it. And so it's all those things, and I think it's just interesting how the story is told with all these aspects, and some people like the way that's told, some people don't like the way it's told, some people, and lose sight of, I think some people can lose sight of what the initial meaning message with this movie and then they get wrapped up in, well, I don't like the dialogue, or this didn't look great, or blah blah blah. So, which I understand is all valid critiques, but I think at the end of the day, what it is to me, it's a good Star Wars movie. It's not my favorite.
Where would you rank it
of the saga? Mm-hmm. It's probably number.
Well, not of the saga, of the 11.
Of the 11
canonical Star Wars films.
There's 11 of them?
There's 11.
Yeah. If we're counting Rogue One and Solo.
And the Clone Wars.
So
you did
12.
make me watch, I did watch Andor. You made me watch Andor.
I did, yeah, he
You
did
liked
watch
Andor.
Andor.
And so the establishment of a, let's say, totalitarian kind of Orwellian regime,
yeah.
galactic-wide, what you're saying is, to put words in your mouth, the context for how it went from what you say is a galactic republic to a dictatorship,
to an empire, yeah.
That begins here.
Yeah, begins here.
Begins
Actually,
here.
yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
This. So if for those watching at home, we actually have the movie playing on mute here. This right here, where Jar Jar Binks votes to give emergency powers to the Chancellor.
Yeah, manipulated, and through his naivete, I guess, all that stuff, they used it to their advantage, and it gets So that's another part of what's makes this movie important. These events that are set forth in motion.
So they're doing a Napoleon Bonaparte thing going on here, where they're electing emergency powers to this guy, so he's the supreme leader. Let us know what totalitarian fascist dictator this reminds you of historically in the comments below. But you're telling me that it's Jar Jar Binks. That is
he does
the apostate here.
Yeah. So what we should establish is Padme,
Yes.
Queen Amidala from the first film.
Natalie Portman. Thank you.
She's the senator for her planet Naboo.
Okay.
And Jar Jar is the representative of the Gungan people from Naboo. So he accompanies her. When she goes into hiding, there's an assassination plot out for her. When she goes into hiding to avoid the assassination, Jar Jar steps up as, interim Senator Binks.
It's a good plan because we ultimately know that Palpatine is pulling these strings to have this assassination attempt on Padme so that he can use this as an excuse to pull Padme away from the capital, away from Coruscant, which then leaves him able to manipulate Jar Jar into voting for emergency powers for him, because that never would have happened had Padme been there. She never would have voted to give Palpatine
Do we know that
powers.
for a fact?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so now my next question, you'll forgive me
Yes.
if you get sick of answering my questions. Feel free to
keep
stop
going.
me. Now, what I don't know, but it looks to me that chamber with the Senate
Yeah.
is quite large, and there's a lot of representatives from all
Right.
over the place. What is it exactly about the Gungan planet that qualifies it for this much attention from?
Great
Well,
question.
because it's okay. So let's break it down.
Because I mean, if I was to go to the United Nations, I'm like, ooh, that Uruguayan. I have to get that Uruguayan out of here because that's the one guy, you know.
So in the first film, Padme and Jar Jar are from the same planet, Naboo.
Confirmed. Okay.
They cohabitate.
Jar Jar, who was already unpopular and
Yes.
is not helping his case
Right.
by
I know,
Yeah.
George.
acting as the cat's paw here, trying to overthrow the Republic.
So in the first movie, in Phantom Menace, there's some political turmoil. You have senators, and then you have the Supreme Chancellor. In the first movie, Padme, who is at the time the queen of her people, which is an elected position, as all queens are.
In Star Wars, they are, yeah.
I can't wait for our elections.
Yeah. So in the first movie, Padme pushes for a vote of no confidence against the current Supreme Chancellor. At which point, Chancellor Sheev Palpatine, who you may know as later Emperor Palpatine, is elected the new Supreme Chancellor. And he is also from Naboo. So at the time of the first movie, he's the senator from Naboo. By the time of the second movie, he is the Supreme Chancellor, and Padme is the senator for Naboo. So due to the plot of the first movie, and also, well, in the intervening 10 years, there's political turmoil, and there is this 1,000 or so planets that want to secede from the Galactic Republic. And they are led by one Count Dooku of Sereno.
And that's Christopher Lee's character.
It's Christopher Lee.
All right.
Who is a former Jedi Knight. He left the Jedi Order after being disenfranchised by the Jedi and the Republic, which is where we're going to get to my great 8 minutes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I'm happy to set you up.
Because it's all about the disenfranchisement of the Jedi.
Okay.
All right? But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Okay.
Because of that, there's an assassination plot out for her. She's the one that's like opposing the Military Creation Act. The Senate wants to create
And it's really all down to her, isn't it?
well, she's a very vocal senator, and we see this repeated. We see this repeated in Andor with Mon Mothma. We see this repeated in a lot of the Star Wars legends and ancillary material with Princess Leia and with Bail Organa. So we always have Star Wars has a habit of following these very vocal senators that are what we see as the ideal as the American people. What we would want as the ideal American senator.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So you actually have watched films that are.
I actually haven't. I just assumed.
Little did we know that James Stewart was ripping off Star Wars this entire time. And so there's a lot of, will nobody rid me of this meddlesome senator being cried out all the time. Right?
I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I'm going to take your word for it.
Fair enough. Okay.
So
That's how we roll on this this podcast.
Because
Loving
George,
it.
George, a lot of what he wanted out of Star Wars was a political statement. People who say like, oh, I don't want my Star Wars to be political, brr. Like, okay, well then you obviously don't know George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, who, hates big government, hates big corporations. Like he's a very hey, just let me drive my car and
I mean, this guy did not want to be part of the studio system to begin
Yeah.
with in
I don't-
Hollywood.
I'm gonna make my own movie.
Yeah.
We'll get my friend Francis and my friend Steven. We're gonna make some movies together. It's gonna be great. And then
I did read that Sofia Coppola was in Phantom Menace.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
she is one of the stand-ins for Padme and Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew about Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
I like Keira Knightley. I like Malik more, but I like Keira Knightley.
So I think there's a world where Keira Knightley was Padme, and I think that would have been a good
That would have been interesting.
good world. All right, so anyways, that's kind of the plot of the movie. So then it's Padme and Anakin go swashbuckling around the galaxy, avoiding assassins. That's actually not what happens, but that would be a way cooler plot, wouldn't it?
A lot more, yeah. There's a lot more green fields and arguing about.
Yeah, there's I don't know. There's a romance plot that's not very well handled. I should say it's not very well written.
Yeah. I understand. Like when it gets to the romantic aspect between Anakin and Padme, I understand what George was trying to do and trying to show us.
We put Padme in some real provocative, sexy outfits.
Yeah. Because I mean,
do we know how old? I imagine either of you might know how old Natalie Portman was.
Well, she was. I believe she was 16 at the time of Phantom Menace, so that makes her 18.
Okay, well then that's fine, isn't it? Let us know what you think in the comments below.
Regardless, I think she had it because I think Hayden was 19 here.
I mean, we talk about childhood crushes. I mean, Padme.
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, for the original trilogy, they had Princess Leia. For us prequel kids, we had
Carrie Fisher is a very attractive woman.
Regardless,
throughout all her life.
Yes. But in terms of the Star Wars,
but Natalie Portman.
Yeah, and a mighty fine actress. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
yeah. But okay, so anyways, the B plot for the film.
Jeez, what happened here?
Obi-Wan Kenobi, who you may know as Ben Kenobi,
or as Ewan McGregor,
or as.
No, I saw that bit. He goes to the lab, and there's a lot of big questions over here at this lab. Like, what the hell is going on?
So, do you have questions for the lab?
Yes.
Okay.
I have no two people that I think would know this offhand more than perhaps you two.
Okay.
Right? Interesting. Now, this is something that really got to me. However money works in Star Wars, right? Yeah. They have a monetary system.
They do.
They have a couple monetary systems.
Having seen the renderings of what happened in this lab, I was like, how much did this cost?
A lot.
I see. Now, that being a lot of money seems to have very little interest on the part of the government officials having gone missing. Nobody really seems interested in tracking down what might very well be billions of United States dollars.
Because we know that at the heart of every investigation, you always follow the money.
So that's what I would do. It doesn't look like anybody's doing it.
So in actuality, there is a Clone Wars animated episode where Yoda does track down what happened to that money.
Well, we know what happened to the money. We just have to know how to pin them.
Where it came from. So I will go back.
Okay.
Palpatine.
Yes.
We know him through the Star Wars franchise as being the Sith Lord.
Right, yeah. He does a really good job, all things considered, everything I know about him.
always two there are, a master and an apprentice. Mm-hmm. At some point, Palpatine had to be the apprentice.
Okay.
Well, the banking clan exists on the planet of Munilist.
Okay.
Palpatine's Jedi or Sith master was immune from Munilist and a member of the banking clan. So he was a very rich, well-off alien.
He was immune?
No, he was immune.
He was immune.
Yeah, he wasn't immune.
Species name is
Munes.
Mune.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can see the confusion.
That took a second.
Yeah, we got there.
All right, so he has a dyed-in-the-wool member of the clan in this banking planet that has money.
Yeah.
Comes from money.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yep. So Palpatine and his master, Darth Plagueis. Have you heard the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Yes, I remember that. I remember that part.
Darth Plagueis the Wise and Palpatine orchestrated the creation of the clone army. Under the guise of a Jedi named Sifo Dyas.
I have that written down.
Who was killed previously before Count Dooku went to impersonate him and purchase the clone army or commission the clone army.
So the clone army is actually privately funded?
Well, it is privately funded, but it is privately funded in the name of the Galactic Republic. So the Kaminoans don't those tall gangly fuckers don't know that the Republic didn't fund it. They think the Republic funded the
So
military.
now this is actually what got me a little confused is because there is I feel like the main active shift in the film is the instatement of emergency powers
Yes.
to Lord Sidious, as well as the acceptance, because the vote is to accept whether or not there's going to be a Republic army, which
Yeah.
I think is weird that the Republic did not already have an army.
So generally in both prior to this event and do you know about Star Wars Legends?
I'm afraid not.
Okay. So everything that was written
Yeah.
prior to 2015
The Disney acquisition.
is considered which is 2014 12.
Or something like that, yeah.
Anyways, it's considered Star Wars Legends.
I see.
Meaning it is not canonical.
So the Aztecs predicted in 2012 it would be the end of the.
Yeah, it was really the end of the Star Wars universe. So
Not a lot of people will tell you that, but that's true. Not a lot
Yeah,
of people
apparently the Aztecs have been ripping off Star Wars. For years.
canonically, we don't have an answer as to why the Republic doesn't have
Standing army.
a standing army. But in
But
Legends,
they had the Jedi Knights. They over relied on the Jedi.
But they are not soldiers.
But they are not.
I
No,
heard
but they
Mace
are-
Windu say that.
they are keepers of peace.
Not
Peace
soldiers.
and justice.
In Legends, it was the Rusan Reformation, which dictated the size of weaponry on starships, the capabilities of starships, and dissolved any standing army for the Republic.
Something of a Geneva Accord.
Yes, something like
Treaty
that.
of Versailles or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Because there was this great period of peace
good.
in the galaxy, right? It's like it's something like hundreds of years of peace,
Boring.
upheld by especially for something that has
Warmongers.
wars in the
Yeah.
title, right?
For Warmongers.
The Star Peace was actually George Lucas's original franchise.
Yeah.
It didn't take off.
Didn't take off, no. That's why he lost Coppola all that money.
yeah. American Zoetrope went down the drain just because of that.
Yeah, we would never want to give Francis Ford Coppola a reason to not lose his own money. He can just lose it himself. What a disappointment that would be.
Yeah.
But so essentially, there's this, it basically dictates starships can't have weapon sizes bigger than basic self-defense.
No water torture on prisoners, blah, blah, blah.
Actually, all that's fine.
Okay.
Kosher. Completely kosher.
Uh-huh.
They got to uphold peace somehow. The other aspect of that is most planets have some sort of PDF, Planetary Defense Force,
Not the digital format.
which I know
Well, they don't have that. Adobe's actually been ripping off the
Yeah.
Star Wars franchise for
No,
years.
yeah, which,
Actually, it was invented by.
actually, yeah, Adobe is a Lucasfilm product.
There you go. Interesting.
Which you guys talked about last week. Where was Naboo's PDF?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see
Brandon
that.
wanted to know.
I didn't see that, but I saw the title of the clip. I didn't watch
Yeah,
the
that's-
clip.
So where do
Very
you
good.
think Naboo's PDF was? Let us know in the comments
Yeah.
below.
Which Naboo had a very small planetary defense force. They had the N1 starfighters. They had
Fish.
Boombas. Jar Jar used the
Big
Boomba.
Boombas,
Yeah.
yeah.
Big Boomba.
Big boom.
Nada bomba.
Yeah, now we're speaking gibberish.
Oh boy.
So anyways,
It's not
that's
gibberish. It's the divine language. Spoken throughout the universe before time was time. What movie is that, Sean?
I don't know.
It's The Fifth Element.
Sounds very. Oh, I've never seen The Fifth Element.
Oh no!
And it's on. Okay,
You haven't seen the 12th canon Star Wars film?
So I will say I have a
right.
list of look. I'm not interested in any of these think piece movies, like
well,
The Fifth Element.
Good, very good.
Whatever. But I have a list of sci-fi fantasy movies that I know I've missed. I want to go back and watch. The Fifth Element is on there.
Oh,
It's just very low on there.
Put it first.
Yeah, I would.
It goes really quick. You can
The-
watch it and be like, oh wow, I have the whole day ahead
The
of me.
the first one on the list was Blade Runner 2049,
Okay. Yeah.
which
That's
was very, very good.
Let us know what you thought about Blade Runner in the comments below on the Star Wars podcast.
Yes.
Well, Harrison Ford's in it.
Harrison Ford. Yeah, Han Solo. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, only like the end bit, and he's real depressed. And
Blade Runner's been
You probably
ripping
only
off
know him
Star
as Deckard. That's why he probably.
Yeah, fair enough. I only know,
So,
I only know him from.
anyways, where were we? We
Indiana
got this
Jones.
this space clone planet. Anyway, so yeah, there's clones.
Yes, so there's clones. Now here's my real problem though. So the end of the movie, which I think we're pretty much at
Yeah.
here.
By the
Again-
way, Frank, This is it.
This is your favorite 8 minutes. Shh. Okay. Well, I think the kind of the
We're gonna get there.
yeah. Okay,
We're gonna
anyways.
The major plot shift is that they agree to form a standing republic army.
Yes.
Correct. And then, conveniently, there are all these clones ready
They're
to
already
go.
ready.
Yes.
Now, don't you think it odd that nobody questions that these
Oh.
clones are ready just in time, and they, without question, immediately adopt the clones as the source of this new Republic army without any sort of hesitancy or
within the
inquiry?
movies?
So-
yes, you're correct.
It looked
about-
expensive to me. I would want to
here's-
know who paid for that.
So here's the component to this, right?
Right.
You have to remember the person orchestrating both sides of this conflict
Right.
is the same person.
That's correct.
So he knows the Republic is going to need an army
Yes.
right now when the army is going to be ready. So they'll have no choice but to adopt that army because otherwise,
I'm not saying they had a choice.
No,
I'm not
I know.
saying they had
No,
a choice.
he's asking how come no one's like where all of a sudden
Oh,
did
There's
100,000 troops come from?
there's no rogue, there's no Aaron Brockovich at work for it's Sean, just so you know, whistleblower. There's no whistleblower at work trying to decipher where these thousands, if not millions, of men came from and got outfitted with.
there's like one or two lines bringing that up in the film.
Oh, good.
But
No,
but no.
don't they touch on that in the Clone Wars?
They do in the Clone Wars animated series.
They do. Touch
They
on
do.
that. But you're right. Within the movies, like they don't ever get into that.
Because-
they don't.
Oh, thank God there were clones. Oh man, we were screwed.
So
They had clones. Oh God, these guys are great. Perfect timing.
hey, you know what? Which is going to bring me to my favorite 8 minutes of this film.
Go for it.
So, the plot happens. Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan get captured
Good job.
and held for execution in the Petronaki Arena,
Great word.
which was painstakingly designed by one Adam Savage of Mythbusters.
Oh, that was him. Mm-hmm. Oh wow.
It's a big old model.
Yeah, it's an arena. We get it.
So they fight the animals. They have the gladiator fight with the Reek, the Acklay, and the Nexu.
Yeah.
Great scene. But the 8 minutes begins when we see Padme, Anakin, and Obi get cornered by destroyer droids, these new super battle droids that
Right.
we've just seen, and some standard B-1 battle droids.
Right.
And then we flash to a hallway, and we see the shadow of one Samuel L. Jackson, Mace Windu, walks out, holds a lightsaber to Count Dooku's throat, and says, "This party's over."
Damn.
That's the beginning of the 8 minutes. All right, best 8 minutes in Star Wars.
Can I also?
Best 8 minutes in this film, at least.
This actually reminds me of some of the promotional stuff for this movie because that was a promotional TV spot and I poured over the internet for all the clips, all the TV spots for Attack of the Clones because I was obsessed about what this movie was going to actually look like, all the Jedi, all the Clone Wars aspect of this movie. I mean, and you had to, and Kevin brought it up last time when we covered Phantom Menace, how you had to use QuickTime to download, there was like trailers or whatever to watch.
You had to
these
download
trailers.
them on AOL.
On AOL. It took forever. I had dial-up, and like, some people had like DSL lines or T1 lines.
No, I
or
saw
whatever.
dial-up in 02. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you had downloaded all these clips. They also had, I think, diaries too, production diaries
really?
uploaded
Okay.
to StarWars.com that you had to use, again, QuickTime and whatnot.
If you use AOL keywords Star Wars, you can get that.
Right. There's like a little box there on AOL homepage on the top right, and you just put in Star Wars. But yeah, it was what a time of the internet because this was the first all digital movie. They were completely shot digitally, and they were uploading these TV spots, these diaries to the website, but you had to use QuickTime Player, which was just like now we have QuickTime on our phones and all that, and it's evolved.
Actually, now
after that.
QuickTime is completely...
Actually, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, now we have Web'em.
Yeah, QuickTime doesn't exist
That's
anymore.
right. That's right.
Yeah, it's not supported.
Although, yeah,
yeah.
I think the player looks a little bit older version
all right,
of macOS.
so this scene, right? Dooku steps out of the shadows. This party's over. And then we see around the arena 50 Jedi Knights ignite lightsabers.
Yeah.
This is... You have to remember, the Clone Wars was one snippet of a line from Sir Alec Guinness, right?
Right, A New Hope.
And
I don't believe that's accurate. I believe that was
Leia.
Luke Skywalker said, "You know of the Clone Wars."
You fought in the Clone Wars, he says?
Yeah, you fought in the Clone Wars?
Right.
Yeah, because Leia...
Yes, I was once a Jedi Knight, just same as your father.
Yeah, Leia says, you served my father in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I guess Alec Guinness never says the word Clone Wars.
You're right, but it's the conversation.
But
The conversation I'm
He got you.
referencing...
He
but
got
the
you.
conversation...
Well, those are the movies I watched.
Yeah, he's seen those movies.
I saw those. That's not a problem.
But what I'm referencing the Alec Guinness speech about, you know,
Yes.
for 1,000 generations, right?
Jedi
And
Knights regarding
this
peace and
idea of
justice.
Jedi Knights. There's this whole idea that we're keepers of the peace, not soldiers. Then why are you called Jedi Knights?
They
Right?
worked at night. They worked
Because-
at night. They were
But-
security guards.
But knights are right. Knights are
Right.
top of the line.
I think we're getting a
soldiers.
little semantic here, but
No,
go on.
we're not. We're not. And I have a point to this.
Okay.
I have a point to this. So we see the shift happen in this scene in the film, right? So you see all these Jedi ignite lightsabers and go to fucking town on the droids, right? This scene is everything George was trying to accomplish with the Phantom Menace. Done right. Because, hear me out.
Yeah.
Hear me out.
Okay. I'm trying. Yeah, I'm just.
Because you have, for a big part of the opening of the film, it's Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon,
Fan man.
fighting droids and
Right.
and doing the acrobatics and the Jedi stuff. This film nails that in the Petronaki Arena.
Sure.
You see all the background combat, the aesthetics and the style and the atmosphere are handled so well.
Are you talking about the scope or just like
Yes.
So
But also-
their offensive capability is fully illustrated.
Yeah, their battle station is fully operational, if you will.
Did you ever watch Genndy Tartakovsky's The
I
Clone
did.
Wars? Yeah,
I did.
I keep forgetting pieces of Star Wars media that I watched, and I really liked
Yes.
those. And that, I think, also speaks to your point of they do actually have very lethal skills that aren't often seen.
So we have this scene, right? They're fighting the fullest extent, 50 Jedi Knights, right? From what we've seen in Episode 1 and in Return of the Jedi, and all Legends material up until this point in 2002, Jedi Knights are these mythical warriors, right? But they're being beaten by robots. And then we have that scene where all the Jedis fall back into that center pit. And as they're falling back in their defensive positions, you see them fall. They're falling at the feet of their own comrades, right? That's that shot where they're all falling back. Do you know the shot I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You don't, but you do.
Yes,
And you see like one of the Jedi just fall from getting hit by a blast shot.
right.
These Jedi have gone from keepers of the peace to fucking literal soldiers in minutes, and they're beaten.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, and then you have that shot. You have that shot looking up on the balcony of the Petronaki Arena that has some inappropriate shapes on it, and then you have Christopher Lee just peeking over that.
Yeah.
Right, slowly as he walks up. They're defeated, and then the music cue happens, and these ships we've never seen
Yeah.
with who but Jedi Grandmaster Yoda,
Yeah.
who is now this tactician, this master tactician, this war leader, this general, leading the clone army on an assault on a planet that has made no aggressive actions up until this point.
Correct. I mean,
The Jedi incite war. The Jedi become soldiers. The Jedi lead armies. This is the corruption and the failure of the Jedi Order in 8 minutes. This is the most important scene in the prequels. It is the folly of the Jedi Order.
So what you're saying is this clearly illustrates the condemnation of
Of the
what you'd
Jedi.
say
Of the Jedi.
There's a staleness, perhaps, or let's say a sedentary kind of
I think
impulse to them.
I think for as much as the Jedi Knights in the prequels state that they are not warriors, that they are not an army. They're not a paramilitary. Because that's essentially what the Jedi Knights are, right? They're a paramilitary. Paramilitary.
Well, certainly, if everybody has to have their own PDF.
Right. There's lots of paramilitaries running around. Right. So I think this 8 minutes, number one, it's a stunning 8 minutes.
Sure.
But
Visually.
but number two, it also shows the fall and the hubris of the Jedi Order.
It's kind of the opposite of a cavalry scene.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's an interesting.
Oh.
So you know full well that in the next 3 or 4, or the movie after this, in Revenge of the Sith,
Yes.
We already kind of feel like they're not going to do well.
Right.
Whatever happens next. Right.
Yeah, we know. Because we know they fall as a result of the Clone Wars.
Just like Anakin does, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an interesting way to frame this particular 8 minutes.
I wish Kevin was here because he loves it when I reframe Star Wars for him.
No, because now I'm trying to see your point of view on this, because do I think it's interesting because they go essentially to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But then why do they have so many troops deployed on the planet?
Right. So due to Obi-Wan Kenobi's report, right?
But they're taking the first act of open aggression.
Right.
The
No. Wait, hold on. So it is a preemptive strike on a planet that is building an army, that has an army, right?
Sure.
So this begins the fall because they were preemptive instead of reactive.
Yeah. The Jedi use the Force for knowledge and defense, never attack.
Yeah, their eyes were. They didn't even need to get involved. They could have just waited for the clone troopers to show up. The 50 of them in the circle with the lightsabers put themselves in a strategically disadvantaged
This is the thing, right? Because you're hitting it right on the head. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme put themselves in that position,
Yeah.
right?
If they had just waited for the clones to show up, everything would have been fine.
Jedi intervention is what causes this.
So the Jedi went to go save one of their own, two of their own,
With an army.
Wait. No, initially, they go and because let's say that those 50 Jedi, they rescue Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme
And leave.
And there's no clone army that shows up to be like, but that doesn't happen because the droid army comes out against the Jedi that showed up.
But what you're missing is the fact that in order for Yoda to have shown up with the clones at the time he did, it didn't matter the outcome of the Petrodaki arena. They were showing up for war anyways.
I guess they were trying to prevent a war by squashing this.
Sure, it is still. But would you disagree that it is still an act of war that they commit?
It definitely is an act of aggression. Yeah.
Is that not against Jedi teachings?
I'm not saying it's not.
Okay.
I'm not also defending that like the Jedi are infallible. Not at all. I'm not saying that. I just think this was for sure. I think a long time coming and which is something that I think.
I'm not saying that had this not happened, the Clone Wars wouldn't have happened. But what I'm saying is
because the Clone Wars definitely
would have happened.
Sure. Hey, we have a cat on the set.
Guys, say hello to Galaxy the cat. Hello, Galaxy.
All right.
Galaxy, you're perfect. No, what's wrong? Galaxy left me here.
We can. She'll get down eventually.
Yeah, she was on our first episode.
She was, I think so. Yeah, it's a.
I'm just saying. It's one of the many pieces of the puzzle for the Jedi's failings, because we find out in the next movie that they're unable to see the dark side. They're unable to predict the dark side. They're unable to predict the.
The dark side is already shrouding the everything.
But I'm saying because the Jedi have already lost their way, and this is the final straw that they're unredeemable at this point. It doesn't matter what Anakin or Sidious does. They are unredeemable as an order at this point because they are a paramilitary organization. They are not a religious group of ascetic monks. They're a paramilitary.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that goes against what the Jedi are meant to be, right?
Sure.
I'm not saying that the Jedi shouldn't act as peacekeepers, but they sent 50 Jedi Knights and an army of 200,000 clones.
So you might be able to accuse the Jedi, amongst having their flaws, as their eyes being bigger than their stomachs.
Absolutely.
When it came to their own perception of their abilities. Because they had been, for say, like unchallenged for...
They've been unchallenged for 200 years.
Which would breed like indolence.
Yeah.
Which on
Complacency,
top of that, I want to give you another... I'm going to throw another thing at you. Is it the Grand Army of the Republic, or is it the Grand Army of the Jedi?
I don't know.
Because Yoda and Mace didn't get no senatorial approval before deploying an army of 200,000 clones.
Well, who's to say they deployed it? They might have just been chaperoning them. They might not have been in charge.
But I'm saying, as far as the timetable goes, right?
Yeah.
There's no Senate. They didn't call Palpatine and go, "Hey, is it cool if we deploy this clone army?" Because even though we know Darth Sidious knows this clone army exists,
Yeah.
Palpatine would have to ask, "What clone army?"
Well, at this point,
in order to keep his cover, he'd have to ask.
At this point, so the way I think you could...
Well, then who does break
rationalize-
the news that a clone army exists?
Palpatine.
Oh.
Well, yeah, they do break the news. They would have to break the news at some point, in the course of the movie. We do see a shot.
So
the movie does end with a shot of a bunch of senators overlooking the clone army.
So when Jar Jar gives emergency powers to Palpatine, what does Palpatine say?
God damn it, Jar Jar.
Damn it, Jar Jar.
What does Palpatine say?
I don't know. He says, "I am."
He says, "I will create a grand army of the Republic."
Sure.
And then...
But he doesn't know. He knows. Let me specify here, right? He knows, because we know he knows.
Yes.
But he's not supposed to know the clones exist yet.
No. But when this army does show up, Palpatine has already stated he's going to create an army. And yeah, is it totally sus that 200,000 clones just show up like a few days later? Yeah, obviously.
Creating an army is not going to war.
I'm not... Okay, we're just talking about...
I mean, this goes back to what I originally said. The timing is just really convenient.
Yes,
it's weird how we would
100%.
bring
It
up
is-
the fact that there was a ready-to-go army of clones just when we had made up our minds to vote on whether or not...
Right, so...
Where were they 30 years ago when the clones were babies?
So if we're addressing, is this the Jedi's army or is this the Republic's army? It's the Republic's army,
Right.
that the Jedi command.
But the
Yes.
Jedi are acting acting on behalf of the Republic. Which, again, this is one of the
But
things...
do we know that when Yoda went to Kamino and he communicates back to Coruscant, to Palpatine's office maybe, he's like, hey, do we know that this stuff did not happen or did happen?
I don't think any of that's in evidence.
Yeah, I don't... That's what I'm saying.
Right, I'm saying either way, it could have or could have not have happened. We don't know for sure. So the question is, you're asking, is this the Jedi's army or the Republic's army? I'm saying it's the Republic's army. I think you're trying to convey that it's the Jedi's army?
I think that the textual evidence would support that.
Even though Palpatine said, "Hey, I'm going to create a
Yes.
grand army of the Republic."
Because who directs the war?
Sure.
The Jedi,
Yes.
right? And that's beside... My point is not whose army is it, right? My point
Well,
is...
you asked the question.
Right, but I'm asking the question as part of the bigger question of this 8 minutes being the fall of the Jedi.
Sure.
It's not Order 66. It's this 8 minutes. Order 66 is a result of this. Because had the Jedi done their job, they would have questioned. They would have gone, why are we fighting this war?
Well, there's another thing. There's an obvious kind of willful disregard.
Yeah. Speaking of willful disregard,
Go away.
she don't care. She don't care. Yeah.
Now, there is a scene in this film that I read about.
Okay. You read about?
Because I'm actually really curious about this specific
Sure.
line of reasoning.
Yeah.
There's a scene in which Count Dooku is talking to Ewan McGregor, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then what does he say?
Well, he reveals that Darth Sidious is what is it? What is his exact
He
words?
says a lot of things.
Yeah, he says a lot. He goes, "Hey, Darth Sidious, he's working, he's doing this, blah blah blah," more or less.
Yes. It's my understanding that he reveals to Ewan McGregor that Darth Sidious is actually in full control of the Senate.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Yep.
That's the word.
So now, to your point, Sean, I think if the Jedi Council has it from the mouth of Lord Dooku that Darth Sidious is in charge of the Senate, and that's not immediately dealt with, that more than anything
Right.
is a condemnation
Exactly.
of the Jedi Orders.
So, and that's my point. They get
Potency.
they get so distracted by fighting a war that they fail to see the fucking devil in their own fucking house.
They explicitly pointed out, oh, no, yes, the bad guy, he's the one who's in charge of the
Yeah.
Senate. And then at that exact same moment, somebody is put in charge of the Senate.
Right.
And that doesn't raise eyebrows.
Right, and this actually starts all the way back in Episode 1 when Qui-Gon's like, "Hey, the Sith Lord attacked us," and they're like, "Wait, well, we need to investigate to see
they're like,
if that's
"There's no
actually
Sith Lord. The
a
Sith Lords are gone."
Yeah, they've been gone. They've been extinct for a millennia. I don't know. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, "Yeah, it definitely was a Sith Lord." There's always two. One's the master, one's the apprentice. Who was who? We don't know. And then
And they never go, "Let's go find that Sith Lord."
right,
They
yeah,
just go, "Maybe he'll turn up."
sure.
So I think that's a stronger piece of evidence for the complacency, which I
Sure.
think you're...
Well, the here's the thing, right? So there's a time period in canon called the High Republic,
Okay.
which is when the Jedi are at their height as they're kind of sort of portrayed as these Arthurian knights, these protectors of Arthurian legend, right? Mm-hmm. Man, Yaddle gets crushed by that door.
Yeah.
Crazy. Anyways, that is when the Jedi are at their height. Everything from there to here is their decline, right? So yes, their complacency is part of it. But exactly what you're saying, I actually love that we got him on this because you're pointing out the like very
What I would take to be the glaring...
right,
Yeah.
Which yeah, why are they
Problem.
not? They're being presented with all this information. There's a mini series that they just put out recently from the point of view of Count Dooku, takes place during Episode 1 while he's still a member of the Jedi Order, and his former Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn, approaches the Senate, and because of the Senate's inability to act, Qui-Gon dies.
I don't know.
Yeah, Qui-Gon, Liam Neeson dies.
But what does that have to do with Count Dooku not being a Jedi anymore? If he's in charge of Qui-Gon,
Well, Count Dooku leaves the Jedi because the Jedi are not acting for the good of the people of the Republic.
right?
They're acting for the good of the Republic,
Uh-huh.
which is the problem, right? The Jedi are not meant to be agents of the Republic. They're meant to be agents of the people of the galaxy.
And they actually know this about themselves, but yet, like as you said, they're distracted.
They're so
by this
distracted
war.
by everything
They're-
else.
Yeah,
I don't think I really don't think that distraction though is a appropriate excuse.
it probably isn't. But again,
One would. Have
I didn't
to,
write the Star Wars.
Yeah, so one would have to say, what is the real systemic impotence of the High Jedi Council?
Arrogance.
Ah, I see.
Arrogance.
Okay.
I would say
So there's a, let's say,
arrogance, self-importance.
a Luciferian concept there of self-appointed authority.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is supposed to hypothetically resonate with Anakin's situation, where
Right.
he's not. There's something of a parallel, is like he's not interested in being told what to do or whatever. He's got an authority problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in terms of, and people have talked about, well, what if Qui-Gon had trained
I don't think it
Anakin
matters.
instead? I do think it matters. I think because you see the difference between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and Qui-Gon in Episode 1. Qui-Gon is not so in lockstep with the Council. Right, he tells Obi-Wan, I shall do what I must," and Obi-Wan's like, "Don't go against the Council again." And so, hold on. And so, I think when you have Obi-Wan, who is like, "This is what the Council has instructed us to do. This is what we do. We don't deviate." And Anakin, in the beginning of this movie, Attack of the Clones, he's like, why else? He's like, it's implied in our mandate that we find who's trying to kill Padme. And Obi-Wan's like, no, we're just here for security. This is what the council's assigned us to do. So
there's the letter of the law and the intent.
Right. And then there's Qui-Gon on the other side of it who we learned, well, I guess mostly through episode 1, if you're just going off the movies, right? He will do what he feel is right. He will, whether it goes against the council or not, he will do what he feels is right. Whereas Obi-Wan, he's not interested particularly in what is right. He wants to make sure that he follows the Jedi order, the council's instructions. Qui-Gon is not that way. Whereas I think Anakin, he veers more towards the Qui-Gon philosophy, if you will, of Qui-Gon's philosophy in terms of the Force, and not so much so beholden to the Jedi Order. And I think that's where there's the clashing. Now, would he have still turned to the dark side, Anakin? Yes, because he is the chosen one. That is his destiny. But I don't think it would have happened in a way in which
The rest of the Jedi Order falls?
perhaps.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with that. And I'm going to tell you why. How do you feel about genealogy and lineage and like family curses?
Well, I don't know what you mean by how do I feel about it.
I mean, like, can you put some stock into like, maybe Anakin's family is cursed?
Well,
and when I say this, I don't mean Luke and Leia.
I think they're definitely cursed in that they're chosen to be the protagonists of this series of movies.
So I'm gonna take you on a journey.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Anakin's master is
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan failed his apprentice.
Obi-Wan what?
Failed his apprentice.
Self-admitted.
Failed Anakin?
Yeah.
Yes,
Self-admittedly.
Yes.
Okay. Who's Obi-Wan's master?
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Okay, great. Who's Qui-Gon's master?
Count Dooku.
Who's Count Dooku's master?
Yoda.
Right. It all stems from Yoda. Yoda's the fucking problem here.
I mean,
Right?
sure.
Well, you can kind of make that into an absurdity and Adam failed Eve, God failed
Right.
Adam,
Cain and Abel.
Brahman failed God. You could that's kind of a kick the can
Down the
argument
road.
Sure,
kind of thing.
but what I'm saying is, because so much of this could have been avoided had Yoda. I'm pointing out this 8 minutes because I see it as I will juxtapose this 8 minutes with the Yoda lightsaber fight, right? Because the Yoda lightsaber fight, Yoda is fucking full Jedi Master, and I don't mean his swordplay ability. I mean the first thing he tries to do is get Dooku to stand down.
Yeah.
And then he's not drawing a saber. He's reacting and not acting, because if he acts first, he's no better than the Sith. He's acting in an aggressive state, right? But the whole issue here is complacency and this arrogance that they're right.
Okay, so what does this have to do with Anakin or the Skywalkers
Well,
being
you kind of
cursed?
got two conflicting ideas there. Because on one hand you have complacency, but then on the other hand you have an indictment of their participation. Are they supposed to be complacent, or are they supposed to participate?
They are complacent in that they have an inability to see their own flaws. They think the way they've been doing everything for so long is working, right?
Which isn't unreasonable, because someone has
been
except
working.
for somebody's coming to their door saying whoever's in charge of the Senate happens to be Lord Sidious.
Right. And on top of that,
and that's in the second movie.
and on top of that, 10 years ago, their great enemy showed up out of nowhere, and they went, it's fine.
It's a blip.
Hasn't been I'm sorry, it was one problem in a couple hundred years. Like, I'm sure we're fine, right? So that's my point. There's both the issue of complacency in their own abilities, which is breeding this arrogance of, no, the way we're doing everything is fine, right? They don't see how far they've fallen from the times where they were these protectors of peace and justice in the galaxy.
So, to put words in your mouth,
please.
It's like,
David, I love it when you put things in my mouth.
The stadium that Adam Savage built is a symbol of the Jedi already having too little too late.
Right. Exactly.
So
The
it's
savage-
not so much that their choice to participate was in of itself unethical. It was misguided for their own best interest.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
And as you had said, that didn't necessarily cap off the Clone Wars, but it was a sign of their diminishment, rather.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Let us know what you think in the comments below.
yeah, they all agree. I know they all agree with me. Don't worry. I'm their favorite part of this podcast. That's why last week had more views than the episodes I've been on.
He doesn't watch the episodes, but he looks at the view
I
counts.
sure as shit look at the view counts.
Wait, so go back to is this Skywalker family curse thing? 'Cause
No.
that's what-
The Yoda family curse.
oh, the Yoda. Wait, what? The Yoda family curse in terms of. Okay, Master Apprentice.
The
Okay.
Master Apprentice
Okay,
lineage.
okay,
How many
okay.
of those fucking Jedi Knights turned to the dark side? 2 out of 4? Not great odds.
It's 50%.
I mean, you're just picking the ones that we know that he trained. There's been countless others.
Yeah,
he's
what's
trained.
your sample size? Then? If you're going to do a study of how many
Right.
of these people
But I
go
mean,
to the
yeah,
dark side,
I think
My sample size is 4.
I think what we've demonstrated here is really really picking at the particulars and stretching them as thin as we can, because there are, I think, lessons in terms of complacency, of hubris, of arrogance and whatnot. All these kind of like vain attributes, right?
Have we even been talking about Attack of the Clones?
No, that's what I was getting to.
Okay.
Because there was
Hey,
like,
how about that fight scene on Tapoka City on the landing platform? How cool is that?
It's great. Before I even get to that, I kind of just wanted to talk about the introduction of Obi-Wan and Anakin as master and apprentice, and how that, I think, really sets the tone for
It's great.
Anakin's Jedi training and his eventual maturation into what we see in Revenge of the Sith. Because when you compare this Anakin, Attack of the Clones Anakin and Revenge of the Sith Anakin, I think you see a much more adult, mature Anakin who does have the dark side tendencies, but I think he's more measured in terms of, he's still pretty arrogant, but I think he's much more measured in his arrogance and not so high and mighty on himself. I think he knows he has things to still master, but he still believes that he is the best, and all his wartime efforts, which you don't see in the movies, you have to go through the Clone Wars animated series to see this. He's not really wrong about how good he is, how he's an amazing pilot, how he's an amazing Jedi Knight. Like, it's not.
Oh, he's a war hero.
And he's well respected within the clone ranks. He wins many battles. I mean, the guy's like, I don't know what his win ratio is, but
Frank,
yes,
wars not make one great.
no, they don't. You're right. You're absolutely right. But he's still, because of all of that, it does feed into this ego and his lust for more power, especially when it comes to Padme. And that's the one thing that Palpatine uses. That's like, if there was never a Padme, which I don't know that Palpatine could have orchestrated the Anakin Padme relationship, or Anakin and some other love in his life that was forbidden.
I think he would have just played the strings of his mother more.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But once his mother is dead, though, I don't know what, because that's ultimately not what. Well, I mean, yes, it does play into the fact he doesn't want to see Padme die, but I think it's. Yeah, it's. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
between,
you're right.
How much more would Palpatine need to trying to twist that knife to turn Anakin more? What else could he do? I mean, eventually, Palpatine would just have to kind of come out and be like, "Yo." I mean, his other angle was the Jedi are evil. The Jedi are, look, they're making you spy against me, right?
From his point of view.
Yeah. So, there's a lot more manipulation. I think Palpatine got lucky with the Padme thing, honestly.
Sure.
He's like, ooh,
Yeah,
we can.
you're right.
I'm definitely going to use this to my advantage.
You're right, but also to David's point, right? Anakin's got this rebellious streak that I think would have also, been a string that. It is a string that Palpatine tugged at. I think Anakin has enough strings where it doesn't matter. And again, like you said, he's destined to fall to the dark side.
Well, I think in Anakin's defense, it is meant to be tragic. Right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
100%.
And so, in the spirit of that, yes, there's an element of arrogance, and that's brought up multiple times. But also, in the tragic sense, Anakin is also earnestly trying to improve the situation.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's this is the movie where his mom dies.
Yes.
And so that plays into his dedication, which is severely non-Jedi like, of I'm going to protect the people who I love.
Yeah.
Which I think is deliberate because all of us watching at home would probably do the same thing.
We empathize. For
sure.
Right.
Including those of us who have those who we love in our lives, unlike Frank.
Yep.
Who
Well, I've met Mrs. Janish, and I think Frank would also go on a killing spree if
Oh, for sure.
something happened.
Yeah.
And I think that is
Not just the women, but the children, too.
and I think
Not just the men, but the women.
and I really think the most unfortunate kind of paratext to the film is such a crucially conflicted and you're going to say like tormented role, like a tormented person, is the main reason people critique Hayden Christensen's performance, because you're looking for someone who's really having some really severe gastrointestinal reactions to these horrible situations and how they
Absolutely, yeah.
resolve fully, but based, like I said, I watched Revenge of the Sith and maybe it was a little bit better than that, but in the Clone Wars that I watched a few minutes of just now is not only is Hayden Christensen wooden, but actually most of the characters are wooden.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as someone who has directed people in the past and performed with them, not to toot my own horn, but it usually is actually possible to spurn someone to perform theatrically with emotion, given enough time and push and caffeine.
George always said faster, more intense. Faster, more intense. Faster, more intense.
That didn't work.
No, it didn't work.
But then again, did it? Then you have to ask yourself, were the performances and the acting in the original trilogy?
No. They're not much better.
But the standards have changed.
Right, but the standards have changed. Yeah, I don't think the performances in the original trilogy are nearly as bad, especially with Empire. But if you look at...
Because George wasn't directing.
But here's the thing, right? Yeah, George didn't direct 5 and 6.
Yeah.
If you look at 4, some of the acting in 4, kind of wooden.
But not
Leia
much.
barely reacts when her fucking planet is blown up.
Yeah. There's...
Let us know what you think in the comments below.
I think...
So, but no, what I'm saying is, unfortunate isn't a relatable, tragic figure.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is that the main emotional content of the film, because we're not emotionally invested in the politics, we're not necessarily emotionally invested in Owen McGregor's James Bond operation. The main emotional drive was actually voted amongst the Golden Raspberry Awards for one of the worst couples. The worst couple was Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen, and that's the exact opposite. And that really, not to make a pun here, but that really plays a role in the reception of the film.
Ironically, the second worst was Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth.
Damn, yeah.
I think maybe the problem's with Portman. No,
Could be.
yeah.
We love you, Natalie.
I love Natalie, but
Absolutely.
call me.
And she's married. She has kids.
I don't care.
Okay, fair enough.
So I guess the question is, what exactly... So in what I read about the film was that people criticized... They all did the same thing for this and Phantom Menace. Underdeveloped characters, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So now what exactly to you, and maybe you can come up with examples from some other franchise, except for you, Sean, who hasn't watched anything but Star Wars, what is really an underdeveloped character?
I'll give you a great example from another Star Wars. Keeley and Evangeline Lilly in Star Wars: The Hobbit, Battle of Five Armies.
Frank, your thoughts?
I've not seen it.
You haven't
I've not seen the Hobbit. I've not seen the Hobbit films.
I read it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you might think
I read it in junior high.
here's a shocker with how underdeveloped whatever Evangeline Lilly's character is.
Okay.
She's not in the book. That's how underdeveloped she is. No, yeah, I mean it's and I think part of the issue, right? A lot of people look at the love story as a big issue with these films.
Which you're supposed to love the love story, right? You're supposed to be like,
Yeah,
oh,
you should be like, man, yeah, you're supposed to, when we get to the third movie and Panakin, and
that was their celebrity name,
when
yes.
they're a celebrity couple, Panakin, when Panakin find out they're pregnant, right? When we get to the third movie, and Anakin wants to do whatever he can to save Padme, we're supposed to empathize with that, and we're supposed to understand that, and we're supposed to say like, fuck yeah, I mean, I would also, commit sacrilegious acts against the Force to
so I would sacrifice all else to
to save.
But then what we're left with is, those two did it. Whereas like when I think about a power couple, I think Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom.
Yeah,
right.
The first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I've really felt, and I think that's what they call the chemistry. Right?
Yeah,
And it was like maybe there was a notable absence of just any chemistry between any two characters in all of
I think there is
Clone Wars.
I think there is chemistry between Ewan and Anakin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ewan and Hayden. I think that for sure. And I think that's where the love story should have been.
Hey, I mean,
been
I
ahead
would
of
have.
the
There is a love story there. There is a love story
Yeah.
there.
But it's you're saying brotherly love.
Is there a brotherly
Yeah.
love? I just imagine maybe a movie that's not Star Wars. Is there a brotherly love story that they maybe could have penned or cribbed? I would say.
Have
I
you
think-
ever seen the movie R?
R. Well, unfortunately, that hadn't come out yet.
Yeah,
It's true, but
fine.
But now imagine this then.
yeah.
Just because we're dealing with a purely hypothetical. Those at home, think of brotherly love movies you'd like to contribute. But imagine an RRR style Star Wars film with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen.
God.
there's a guy on there is a guy who's like reimagined the Star Wars prequels. This was like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And he did these animatics for him.
Yeah.
And that's what he pitched as Star Wars Episode 2 was a brotherly love Star Wars. I'm going to say, because I've only seen Star Wars films, Star Wars, the Indiana Jones, and the Temple of Doom, and the brotherly love between
Short Round
and Han Solo.
I got you. Yeah.
Dang, yeah.
Because it is sort of that master apprentice relationship, right? And then you still have the love interest there, with whatever the fuck her name is.
I think what you're referring to with Short Round and Harrison Ford would actually have improved the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh.
I agree. Because we don't actually see a lot of interaction. Phantom Menace, we don't
true.
have much interaction between Obi-Wan and Anakin until the very end, which I go, whoa. Like, okay.
Brother, my ass.
So I have... I know this isn't our Phantom Menace episode. I wasn't here for Phantom Menace.
No, you weren't.
This is one of my big issues with Phantom Menace, right?
Get it out there.
It's almost this movie that has nothing to do with the rest of the plot, right? Instead of... We should have started with Anakin and Obi-Wan... child Anakin and young adult Obi-Wan.
I hate snakes, Anakin.
Bond,
I hate them.
Right? We should have started,
I fucked up your mic really bad.
And he could have been, who cares? He could have been, Anakin could be like, Dr. Obi. Oh,
no.
I'm sorry.
Instead of Jar Jar Binks.
No, okay. Jokes aside, that's my issue with Phantom Menace is it's at least Attack of the Clones.
Your problem with the Phantom Menace is it didn't start where you wanted it to start.
My problem is I don't think it starts in a logical point to begin.
That's fair. That's fair to say. I also just think George wanted to tell a story and show it in a era of Star Wars, And he's like, I'm gonna make. Well, if I want to do that, then Anakin's a kid.
Sure.
You know. And so yeah. But I understand. I've definitely talked about this with Kevin. You know, like, oh, what if episode 1 starts where episode 2 actually starts?
I'm not saying
and
that.
then-
I'm saying.
I'm saying that.
Okay,
I'm
sure.
saying like I've thought about where else would you start Anakin's story.
I'm fine with where they started Anakin's story. I think the problem is that Obi-Wan does not play a more active interest or a more active part in Anakin's story from the beginning.
He's an underdeveloped character.
Obi-Wan is absolutely an underdeveloped character in Phantom Menace. 100%. He's a background character for all intents and purposes.
Oh, sure.
Right? And I don't think that's correct.
We do.
Well,
Ewan was praised with Liam. They were both. Their performances basically carried the critical
Absolutely.
reception.
Oh,
Critical
yeah,
reception
yeah.
at the time.
I don't think that. I think it's interesting to see where Anakin and Obi-Wan.
I mean, he's fresh off Star Wars Train Spotting. You know.
Right. I think it's interesting to see what Jordan did. Yeah, put it in the veins.
Death sticks.
There you go.
I'm getting it. I'm
Well,
getting it.
that's why in the second film he goes, I don't want to sell you Death Sticks, because he's remembering when he
Yeah.
was younger and he saw the baby on the ceiling in Star Wars Train Spotting.
Dr. Obi.
Oh my God. I just. Oof. What if that movie happened? Good Lord. What was I trying to say?
I don't know. I'm
Who
sorry.
even knows anymore?
Let us know what you think that he was trying to say in the comments below.
I do think that.
They probably have a better idea because they have a rewind button.
Oh, good Lord.
Yes, they have a physical rewind button. They don't just click and drag.
Don't you?
No.
You're not watching this on your CRTV with the VCR hooked up? I do think it's interesting where Obi-Wan and Anakin's story begins, and I do like seeing where and how it starts, why it starts that way.
I mean, I think there's an interesting aspect.
Fantastic. This is the episode of Cats, which has a lot about.
Is this the is this the butthole cut?
This might be the.
Hey. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So here's my question. Nope, not a question. Here's my statement. I do like that Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship starts on a note of loss.
Yeah.
A note of loss and a note of jealousy on Obi-Wan's part. Right? Because Obi-Wan feels slighted that Qui-Gon shows more interest in this young Padawan when, hey, I'm your Padawan. You're supposed to be, making
But
sure.
he also,
So
but he
you're
also says
still making up for the fact that you missed the Phantom Menace episode.
A little bit,
But
not
Qui-Gon
entirely.
says about Obi-Wan, I can't teach him.
He's
I
ready
can't
for the trial.
He's like, he's ready. He's good to go.
Right.
I can't.
But
teach
he
him
needs to
anything more.
tell. But Obi-Wan needs that note of affirmation.
He's constantly like, I want to do what's right. I want to be vindicated in what I'm doing.
Because a Jedi Master.
I mean, he does get that in the Phantom Menace before the Battle of the
I
Naboo.
know he does, but
jealousy is not necessarily rational, is it, Frank?
That's true.
anyways,
Kevin, or
Kevin,
Toes.
Sean, we're over here.
There's a cat though.
Yeah.
The cat's not afraid of you. So I'm thinking about other movies in which there are two protagonists, but they aren't
Brothers
playing together. So, for example, there's two protagonists in like A New Hope, but they're in the same adventure. What I mean is like this is a movie from what I saw where it's two different adventures happening concurrently, and that's why momentum is very difficult.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, go ahead and narrate that for me.
Two protagonists are in a different place the whole time.
Yeah, because that's where Han Solo and Luke deviate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And people love Empire.
People love Empire. Arguably most Star Wars movies, the protagonists are not in the same spot, except the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because there's the whole we got to split them up so that when they come back together for that brief moment of time, you appreciate it more.
Right.
That
every season of Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, they all go off into their own little spaghetti.
Yeah,
season.
until the last
I'll
episode.
say, yeah, I don't want to get too far on a segue, but this last season, I was like,
I'm not done yet.
I'm
watching it right now.
You got to catch the fuck up because that's been out for a year and a half now.
I'm working on it. I'm like 5 episodes in.
All right, fair enough.
Elle just got taken by a doctor.
There's just all these plates just spinning. How are we gonna spin all these
There's
plates?
so many damn plates. But yeah, that's absolutely because I watched. I'm gonna bring this back to Star Wars, right?
Stranger Things has been ripping off Star Wars for a million years.
Absolutely.
a million at least, bare minimum.
Absolutely. I watched the first season when it aired.
Of Star Wars?
Of
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
Okay.
And then I never watched any more of it. And then like 2 weeks ago, my fiance and I decided, well, I had said, let's watch Stranger Things. I think you'd like it. And I want to watch it. So either I watch it without you or you watch it with me.
Oh, I wonder how that went.
So, I give her that ultimatum a lot because I'm more willing to binge a show than she is. And often she'll go, yeah, that's fine. I'll watch it on my own time or I won't, but this one, she's like, okay, fine. Yeah, let's watch it. Which means I would already be done with the series if it weren't for me waiting for her. But in the middle of the third season, I go, all these seasons have the same plot. Characters all split up and they all come together and then Elle saves the day. Which seems like where they're leading to for the plot of the fourth season too. Because they're like, they got to go train Elle to be a superhero again.
Yeah. Hey, how about this?
Oh, which brings me back to Star Wars. That's also the plot.
Yeah.
Of all the.
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying.
It's also the plot of all the Star Wars movies.
Let us know what you think the plot of Stranger Things is in the comments below.
What are your highlights from this movie?
Yeah. So my favorite parts of this movie are the chase sequence on Coruscant, chasing Zam and that whole thing. Let's see, what else? Definitely, I mean, the, what do you call it?
Which I think very well illustrates the...
Obi-Wan and Jango Fett fight on Camino. That one is
great.
Yeah.
I was gonna.
You were looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" I was like,
"No." I was going to say I think the chase sequence very well illustrates the father-son, brother-brother dynamic. Younger brother, older brother dynamic of.
Well, he does say the closest thing to a father to me.
Right, but they also in other they oscillate between brother father in different lines.
I think at this point in his life, as
he's been growing up,
it's more of a father son, and as he gets older, they become more brother because they become
through the events
in terms
of the events
their
of
powers and knowledge and adventures. They become more equal-ish, especially because Anakin is in ways more powerful than Obi-Wan. It's just that he's not as disciplined as Obi-Wan. Anyways.
But they also fight a war together.
I mean, yeah, that's talking about Band of Brothers, that type of thing. So
yeah, if you've seen Band of Brothers.
Yes, exactly.
Which was ripping off Star Wars.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've never seen Band of Brothers, but it's not a Star Wars movie.
I think... I actually really like kind of the Obi-Wan. So Obi-Wan, Jango, all of that stuff on Camino, going into Geonosis, right?
You like Obi-Wan James Bond?
I do.
You think there's a
was
world
bit
where
of,
Ewan could have been 007 instead of Daniel
I
Craig?
would
They gave
like-
him his own show, right?
Obi-Wan? Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to see a more noir Obi-Wan. That would have been fun, but and we got some
It wasn't
of that
depressing
in-
enough.
I mean, Obi-Wan he's been through.
I just imagine Obi-Wan. It's a hard day on the Coruscant streets.
A dark night in a galaxy that knows how to keep its secret.
My sometime apprentice,
Holy crap.
my sometime apprentice and assistant in all my investigations is after some dame named Padme.
Sean, do you watch Venture Brothers?
No, but I know I should.
Yeah, there's some good. There's at least one really good noir episode.
I think.
Let us know your favorite episode of Venture Brothers.
Let us know your favorite noir fiction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole conclusion of this movie I will say, I really love the Yoda Dooku fight. I'm not so hot on Anakin Obi-Wan Dooku.
All right.
I just, in terms of the way
it's a huge
it's
step
edited
down.
It very much is, and I think you're going to have some limitations with Christopher Lee at that age, even though they're doing stuff digitally with face replacement and whatnot. But also just the setting, you're in a hangar which is very plain. Doesn't allow for a lot of dynamic type of
does.
In a plain hangar, where like it's an open space. There's not terms of I'm talking about in terms of in comparison to the Phantom Menace, where the setting was always changing.
But we don't need that. I mean, because the throne room is a pretty static space. But they added things like catwalks and pits and peaks and valleys. That's a set.
Sure.
That's a set design and a choreography issue.
That's what I'm saying. It contributes to my lack of investment, or how I would rank this lightsaber fight. Like it does not have as much dynamic choreography and things like that. I like the Yoda Dooku interaction just because we've never seen Yoda like that, and we still have. We probably will never see Yoda like that ever again
until he fights Lord Sidious.
Until the next movie, we see it again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yes, this is true. Wow, I forgot that was a thing for a minute, but
he threw the Senate at him. The whole Senate. I actually remember the Robot Chicken Star Wars stuff now. I keep thinking about Star Wars stuff that I've interacted with. Like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's Star Wars.
All right, so
but the thing was at that time it was like, whoa, we had never seen. So that's why that does have a particular
Shorty can fight.
And also like the way he pulls out his saber is just so freaking cool. I was like, and that was another TV spot that I was just obsessed over. Oh my god.
Well, I remember the other one. This is a Revenge of the Sith one. But when he runs, chucks the saber in the chest of the clone, and then grabs it, and then you just see.
Yeah, we could have talked about that. We could talk about that next week.
That's great. You know what, Frank?
We're not going to cover Phantom Menace, Clone Wars, and
Frank. Is this?
Returns.
I have a question for you, Frank.
Yeah.
Is this podcast about our love of Star Wars, or are we not allowed to talk about any Star Wars outside of this little tiny bubble?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, great. No, I do want to talk about the Obi-Wan, Anakin, Dooku fight scene.
Yeah.
Because I didn't mean to like push back on like, no, you're wrong, but I don't think that it being a hanger is the issue, because there's lots of interesting things you can do with a hanger as a set piece encounter.
Sure. In theory, I agree.
The issue is, number one, how badass is it that Anakin grabs a second saber to keep up with Dooku, right? That's such a...
Which is funny because Obi-Wan throws it to him, and then the next shot is Dooku and Anakin, and you don't see... And Obi-Wan is nowhere to be seen. I just, in terms of visual filmmaking and editing, it just bothers me. And like, that's a movie-making thing, not a story thing. Like, on the page... Obi-Wan throws his saber to Anakin. I'm like losing my mind, right?
Right.
But when I watch it, I go, "Oh, that's cool." Wait,
where'd
Obi-Wan go? So yeah.
Well, the other issue is that most of this,
and it's only like for like 7 seconds, man. I'm like, come on.
And a large section of this fight is framed just chest up, with lights. With colored lights flashing over their faces.
Again, when you cast someone like Christopher Lee,
I get that.
That's what happens. I think. It can happen.
I understand that, but
because they weren't at the level of Revenge of the Sith filmmaking yet, or digital work.
Because the fight with Anakin and Christopher Lee the second time, where it's the same fight again, just different, is much better. It's a great fight scene, or a good fight scene, not a great fight scene, maybe.
Sure.
But.
Well, my take on that, actually, what you brought up is we were talking about things that we take away from the movie. George Lucas had specifically waited in his mind until the technology had approached the capability that he was able to make the movie that he wanted to make. So when we see, I know Christopher Lee is in it, but I don't think in the fight scene I don't think he's in it at all, frankly. I think it's all digital.
Are you talking about Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith?
Attack of the Clones.
He is in there for a little. There's the shots where they're just showing their face and they're waving.
Yeah, because
sabers around
a lot of the shots are
it's a practical prop with like the light emanating, and that's actually Christopher Lee's face. But for the most part, you're pretty much right.
But that is what George Lucas was comfortable putting out.
Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. What I'll also say was when they made the Phantom Menace, they did not have the technology yet to do what they did with Yoda in this movie. But he was like, we're going to get there because we're at a point where we're going to get there. So, yes, comfortable is the right word to use, that he was okay. But if he could have done more, he would have done what he did with Dooku and Revenge of the Sith. And if they had more than that, they would have, he would have done everything possible to make that look what he wanted to do. He was once again constrained by the technology of his time
an
extent.
When you say the Yoda thing, are you referring to
fully CG Yoda.
The fully CG
yeah?
Yoda,
Because
yes,
Puppet
yes.
Yoda in Phantom Menace
Yes.
looks bad.
Well, thank God the Phantom Menace episode
Was last week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you can't.
because Yoda looks amazing in Attack of the Clones.
I think he looks pretty good. In terms, when the movie came out, I thought he looked phenomenal. But when this movie is put on Blu-ray and other digital mediums,
and we've got Dolby
Vision, and it's like it really does make those assets of the movie stand out. And there's nothing wrong. I don't begrudge that. I'm just saying, for its time, absolutely groundbreaking stuff.
That's what.
So like that particular stuff doesn't age as well. I'm not concerned with that ruining my enjoyment of the movie. I'm just simply pointing out a movie thing that I notice.
Sure.
So now what's interesting is you had brought up the digital camcorders that they had actually mained for the show.
Yeah.
1080p, right? Or whatever. But what I hadn't known until I read about it was that George Lucas had actually urged projectionists in theaters to also adopt digital. And is kind of we had talked about how he's on the favor of technology and democratized
He did this.
filmmaking.
He originally did this with the sound, starting with Return of the Jedi. When they were mixing and he went to theaters, they're like, "Whoa, this sounds like crap." It's the whole reason why you have really good sound in theaters, because George wanted his movies to sound the way that he was mixing them and all the sound effects. And thus, again, with when he's shooting digital, and then these theaters don't have the capabilities to show the movie the way he wants you to show it. Again, he goes into actually that's how you got THX when Return of the Jedi. That's how that all started.
And that's why it's named after that other movie.
Yes, the THX 1138 or 113, however you say it. And then for the digital format, how he was shooting, he wanted theaters to be able to show the movie the way he was shooting it, the way he wanted the audience to see it. So he's a very innovative individual within the filmmaking world. And I don't think anyone would ever deny that.
Kind of speaks also to this indictment of complacency, right? And it's like, is it the Academy of Jedi or is it the Academy Awards?
Well, that's the thing.
setting this glacial pace of advancement in the technology of filmmaking.
Now, David, I'm curious. What other questions you have for the movie?
Oh.
Let's rapid fire some of these. This is gonna be good.
Okay, so we had covered that there was a lot of money, Star Wars money.
It's not like a Star Wars tax accountant right now.
Star Wars. Well, I mean, follow the money. I mean, I'm just saying there was a lot of money used for these cloners, but they had already been established as cloners, so they were already in the industry of cloning. They were superior,
and they are all clones.
Okay, so what exactly other clientele are they hypothetically servicing and it can be from the books, it can be from video games, I don't know, and the whole saga, the whole Silmarillion?
That's a great question. We don't have a whole lot of details on that because they were sort of secretive in that the Republic forgot they existed.
Well, they were erased.
Yeah, they were erased. But we do know that.
But Dax was like, "Oh yeah, that's Camino, man."
You mean the cloners?
You just gotta hit the streets and start asking the diner, the fry cooks. And the fry cooks know where the dirt is.
The line cooks all know about Camino.
I know whenever I need to find a secret society of genetic engineers, I go to my local diner.
Based off of what exactly? It was like a little
Camino saber dart.
Camino saber dart.
Right here.
Little, carvings that give it away.
Little fins that give
I watched
it
a
away.
video of a guy and he was identifying pottery shards, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
He was just like, "Oh, this is from XBC. It's this little piece of crap."
Oh my God.
This is XBC. This is 9 AD. This is nothing like. Was no fucking way.
Was he also in a diner?
Yeah, he was a fry. He was a fry cook in a diner. He was a schizophrenic fry cook, holding up pottery shards.
Someone at the counter just goes, "Is my burger ready yet?"
Yeah.
What is next? So George Lucas is, I think we're confirmed, not making films in the future, right?
Not publicly.
Nope.
Not publicly.
So when we look at filmmaking as a whole, and this has to do with actually my feelings about Babylon. I don't know if you watched that. I know you don't watch anything but Star Wars movies.
You know what? Okay, so I got excited when I, jokes aside, I'm a big fan of genre fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, that sort of stuff. So when I heard, and I'm a big fan of like historical dramas, like Troy, great, Gladiator.
Yeah. Very much also done in the classical style of Hollywood.
Right. So when I heard they're making a film about Babylon, I was stoked. And then
I had to tell you. Oh, it's not about what you think.
It's not.
Frank.
It's not a biblical movie.
Right. Frank brought up Babylon last week, and I went, "Oh, that's cool. They're making a I'm probably gonna like that." You're like, and then you said something like, "It's about old Hollywood or something." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm
a spin on or a take."
Not fucking interested.
Yeah. Well, it's about so in short, it's about an innovation in filmmaking and how it changes filmmaking entirely. It's like an irreversible, comprehensive, entire change in filmmaking that some people consider to be the death of filmmaking.
Is it talkies?
It's talkies, which is an interesting target. You wouldn't really think about that. But thinking about also contemporarily watching Avatar, another film in which the creative director
is
waiting for the technology to advance to the point. So I have my convictions, but I'm interested in y'all's as fellow moviegoers. What are the next, you think, big shifts in filmmaking that are really going to change it? I will point out, for example, that when we watched Babylon, Frank and I, given the subject matter as the innovation of Hollywood, the movie we watched was in a theater. And we actually got a personal message from Margot Robbie and Diego Calva at the beginning saying, "Thank you for coming to watch this in a theater and not streaming in your living room."
Right.
Which speaks to, and that was not an intended level of humor in my opinion, but it was a level of humor. It's like, times they is a changing. Right. Right. And so
I don't know that this is so my prediction, I don't know this is for, I don't think it's going to affect in the same way that a lot of the examples we're bringing up will.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
But I think with the advent of how much media is going direct to streaming, I think the next step is going to be VR.
Oh.
I think we're going to start seeing some more, probably not 360-degree movies, but 180-degree movies where there's some format for them to be able to put it on a VR headset where you have you can, move your frame of reference to it to an extent. I don't think it will be a full, unless it's maybe a Pixar film, right? They fucking, animate the whole damn thing. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's the most likely weird, crazy leap in technology, right?
Okay.
Because we've gone, if we're talking the big major leaps, right, is, audio, feature length, color, digital,
you're right. These are just lists of innovations,
right? The big giant.
Yeah, I mean, also non-commercial. I mean, all the stuff that we watch, the line between television and film has already been blurred.
Yeah,
because these pieces are an hour and a half to 2 hours long per episode already, and there's 6 to 7 of them.
Back to Stranger Things, right? The 4th season of Stranger Things, almost all the episodes are an hour 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So format changes. What I'm thinking of is let's say you had a 22-year-old George Lucas today, or a Robert Zemeckis or something, and said, the next movie I'm going to make, I'm really going to use this technology because nothing's going to matter before it.
Well, I think one of the technologies that they are pioneering or in the process of advancing more is stagecraft, the volume, using that. And I think getting that technology to work in concert with how they want to tell stories and how to, I think it might be less.
The volume being the large IMAX soundstage.
Yeah. What they use on Mandalorian, and they've
you can put a person anywhere and you can make
right, exactly.
Yeah. The construct from Star Trek, right?
Yeah, kind of basically.
We don't. This is a Star Wars podcast.
Sorry. Let us know how much you hate Star Trek in the comments below.
Yeah, just like the Danger Room.
Okay.
Yeah, Danger Room. Yeah, Danger Room. I think it'll probably.
You know what?
More...
Have we reached the point where we could make a Danger Room now?
Probably
with VR and the volume. You think we can make a real?
Oh, I mean, in
danger room?
VR easily, but like in terms of without putting anything on yet, it's the volume is the closest you're going to get to that.
Okay, so you think the volume? So everybody's going to have a volume in 2 years, perhaps.
I mean, it's
already
that's not
it's already
that's
happening.
that's not private like software, whatever. That's not owned solely by Disney, or whatever. Like it's open for anyone to use. It's
So we could set up a volume in our backyard.
we could
Yeah,
we could.
We could do it right now.
let's get started.
But I think it'll be probably more. It won't be so much for the movie going experience. I mean, they're already shooting more movies with IMAX cameras. I think that's probably like you'll see more and more movies with.
Well, Christopher Nolan had been the only person who had really
Right.
dedicatedly done that, and not even the entire film, just specific.
shots.
aren't
Right,
they-
you're right.
Aren't they? Isn't there like I don't know. I don't.
But I think what that means is like it's gonna try and create just you can only get this stuff in the theater. No one's gonna have a 70-foot screen in their backyard. Someone in LA would probably,
aren't they-
but like there's gonna be the quality cannot be matched at home. You can only get it at the theater, and I think through that type of thing will be for the customer experience, the audience goer experience. But in terms of like filmmaking, it'll be more economical ways to make film, which includes things like the volume and stagecraft like that.
Aren't they now doing things in some movies where they have like an additional component in addition to audio video? Isn't there like something where your seat moves a little?
No,
bit?
that's 4D, but that's still
thing.
very, very
I've
niche.
never done that.
That's
I
still
think I
very,
did
very
that
niche.
in like Universal Studios.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
yeah,
I've never experienced it.
I've never
but
done
I've
it
heard
either,
of it
but
as
yeah.
the 4D.
There's
stuff.
also another like 180 experience, I think, too, where it's
This
some
movie
movies can
was-
do it. Like I know, like Top Gun Maverick had that thing where you had like
You had
screens on
okay.
3 sides or whatever it
Cool.
was, and it's still very niche stuff like that. I don't know that it would be super mainstream ever. The VR thing, I think that does not adhere to the theater going experience at all.
right,
So
but
I don't think that's
But I
going to
think
have.
I think that's part of what we're seeing change right now. Right, is the theater going experience is being minimized in favor of streaming. So as far as what's building off that technology, what's next? I mean, I
Sure.
can hook up a streaming rig in my fucking.
I mean, people can already do that. Watch movies VR wise. Anyway, so
Right, but what I'm saying is something formatted for VR.
sure, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's like maybe I don't know.
Because there's nothing to say you can't go sit in a theater seat and they put a little headset on you in the same way they put 3D glasses on.
Yeah, that's like that one
Then why would
game
you
that was
sit in the
turned into a
theater?
movie. What was that?
Why would you sit in a theater to do that?
Not everyone could afford a VR headset.
So you would be shoulder to shoulder with people with VR headsets, but you wouldn't have one, right?
No, everyone would go in a theater and you'd get, instead of putting on 3D glasses, you put on a VR headset.
I don't know why you would go to a theater to put on a 3D headset.
Because I don't own a VR headset.
Correct, but they could just put you in a room, like on a bench somewhere.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be an auditorium.
Right.
No, I'm
Yeah.
being persnickety about the dimensions of the room, not
Right.
anything to do technically.
I think the reason is because you want to pack in 120 people all at the same time.
I got you.
Yeah.
What else did I have?
Got any Star Wars questions?
No, I love it. I love this.
So Dooku's Confederacy of Independent States, quote unquote, threatens the Galactic Republic. What is basically unethical about a democratized confederacy of independent systems?
Well, they're called the Confederacy, so clearly they're bad.
Yes, they're called the Confederacy, but I'm wondering what, in terms of policy, it was that specifically set them as being antagonistic to the Republic.
I don't know.
Because
It's vague.
it was decided by the higher ups of Naboo that it was basically non-democratic, and it was also cited by Palpatine himself as being the division of a 1,000-year-old republic and
Right.
being reprehensible. But there's not any actual policy
No.
that suggests it. But we all know that that was just a smokescreen for
Right.
divisive.
Right.
politics.
I've two responses to this question. So first, how would America react if, say, California wanted to secede from the Union?
I think it happens all the time.
Right, but began to actually take action for it and it looking likely.
They would probably ridicule California.
Right, and it probably wouldn't. They would probably take action to stop it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Texas would probably cease to have power. Like,
There'd
So-
be no electricity.
yeah, exactly.
So the second response to that is we find out in other media that hey, maybe the CIS were more good guys than we thought, right? Or more people involved in the CIS were good guys, right? Again, both sides are stemmed from the same source and the same source of power. So everyone's bad. But we find out in other mediums that there was nothing wrong with what the Confederacy wanted. It was just the influence from Sheev, prevented it.
It says here, Palpatine already can issue executive orders in his position. So one questions the necessity of his power play.
Well, I think that generating public support is a better option than just going, nah, fuck you. Because that's the thing, right? It's been a hotly debated topic as far as the creation of the Grand Army of the Republic. So the Military Creation Act has been a hotly debated topic. If he just overstepped his own planetary senator, it would be a bad look that would undermine his power, because his power means more if it's power from the people rather than power in spite of the people. So he's trying to make it look like he is acting in favor of the will of the Republic. Whether or not he is doesn't matter. It's
Added
just
legitimacy.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you watch the 3D re-release in 2012?
It didn't happen.
Yeah, did not.
Well, I guess I'm misinformed.
So
Only Phantom Menace came
was released in 3D.
Okay.
And then Disney bought Star Wars, and they didn't release the rest of the films in 3D.
Yeah, it was slated. They were slated to release all of them in 3D, but then
Oh, it's Phantom Menace that was re-released in 2012, not Attack of the Clones.
that's probably right. Yeah. Yeah.
No, you're
I
absolutely
did.
right, because that's how it netted. That's how it grossed $1 billion, because it hadn't grossed $1 billion.
Oh.
So
Look at that.
I did watch the re-release.
lowest.
I did not. I was really upset that I didn't see it in 3D.
Great. I
So-
got a little heart pin with 3PO and R2 on it.
Oh, that's cool.
Uh,
Should have talked about that on the Phantom Menace episode.
Would have been great.
Lowest grossing Star Wars film, but still in the top 100 highest grossing films of all time.
What does that tell you?
That's the power of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's the power of the universe, the world that he built. People want to go into that world, and they'll still come out and say, "I didn't like that movie, but man, was it cool on Geonosis? Was Camino awesome?" That's
George Lucas began writing Phantom Menace. George Lucas began writing Phantom Menace in 93 and was released in 99, and then was given the unenviable task of writing the second
go ahead.
the movie Clones in 3 months instead of 3 years.
Yeah. But I think he already had some backstory of.
He had backstory.
Yeah, that's all he had, really.
You know what? I don't have a good response to that question.
Yeah,
but
It wasn't a question, really.
I do.
I hadn't got to the question yet.
Oh, great. Okay, go ahead.
3 months writing Clones and finished Clones 3 weeks before they began principal photography for the movie.
Oh, that tracks.
And then LA Daily Times.
Galaxy's back.
Hello, Galaxy. LA Daily Times, which is one of the better contemporary reviews I could find for the movie at the time it came out, gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Breaking an agreement they had made with the studios, releasing their review on a Sunday, day early. And they said 3.5 out of 5 stars, pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, but that was, I'm so sorry, because I have two, that's Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace.
Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
Phantom Menace, they broke pretty good. So my thing is,
Okay, Galaxy.
this, I think it's not that fun to kind of pile dirt on top of the film, which we already would be
Right.
traditional in saying was polarizing at the very least, right?
You know what I think is not polarizing? The wonderful like 50s retrofuturism aesthetic that George was able to achieve in this film.
Mm-hmm.
The design for the clone troopers, the design for all of their vehicles and technology so elegantly captures that sort of sleek 1950s aesthetic,
including a diner.
Including the diner.
Dexter,
most notably the diner.
most notably Dexter Jettster's diner.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, because he wanted to paint a picture of what it looked like before the Empire, and so you could have the contrast between what you get with the Empire and what you get with the Republic. You know,
this film makes some interesting movements, right? Like this film begins with fucking American graffiti in Star Wars.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah, which tracks.
We get a street race. We get this story of lost love between Padme and Anakin, and you know we get this. Then we move to this assassin plot, this political thriller, this Bond film that's still embracing these 1950s roots. Then we go to like an All Quiet on the Western Front, full on war epic. You know, a Saving Private Ryan.
Well, yeah. I mean,
You know.
I guess you call Obi-Wan Private Ryan.
You know, How great.
Why me? What makes me so special?
What a great fucking film, right?
Look, overall, I enjoy it. Do I have particular issues with how the movie was made and how it was executed? Sure. More than than the rest of the Star Wars films, absolutely. But then again, I look at kind of the story it's trying to tell, and I appreciate, you know, kind of the story. And I wish it was executed differently or told differently in certain regards, especially to the love story and Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship. Sure, there's certain things that I'm not particularly over the moon about, but I understand what George was going for, and that's not to apologize for the movie, not at all. I understand it, and I'm also not one to dedicate large amounts of energy
To hating
the film, or to keep just piling on the negative aspects or the perceived negative aspects of it. Look, I only have to talk about it once or twice, and it's out there. Fine. I don't need to keep harping on that stuff over and over again.
Yeah, they'll do that for you in the comments.
Exactly.
Well,
make sure you do that in the
Other
comments
people
section.
will do that. I do not have to do that. Just know that I don't hold as much passion for the negativity for the film as others do. I choose to spend my energy on the things that I like about the movie, which is quite a lot, and that's how I choose to experience the movie and enjoy the movie.
So speaking of how this film is executed, if you want to go ahead and execute a like on this video, execute a subscribe, execute a share.
If you've made it to this part of the episode, you are an absolute clone trooper. Let me tell you.
Fucking legend.
Next week, we're going to execute an episode on executing Order 66.
Too bad it wasn't episode 66.
I know. That would have been so great.
That'd have been, but it's not. It's like episode 30 or
I
27.
personally love this film. I think it's so Star Warsy and campy and fun. And you know what? I want to thank David for executing this episode with us. David,
this was a trip.
What are your before we take off here, David? What are your final thoughts on? I would say Attack of the Clones, but you haven't seen Attack of the Clones.
Well, now I've seen the majority.
Okay, so what are your thoughts?
Some of it in incomprehensible Japanese and severely distorted by,
and some of it muted,
and some muted on subtitles.
Yeah. David, what are your thoughts on the episode as our producer?
Hey, I'll tell you what. There's going to be haters. Whatever. I missed out because if I had seen this movie, when I was in school, right, I probably would have been jazzed about it because whatever. But it's just some people miss out on this stuff when they're kids. The stuff that you see when you're a kid and you're into when you're a kid, like, quality isn't the main determining factor in the stuff when you're watching. I used to watch like stupid cartoons when I was a kid too, and they're the best cartoons. I'll fight you about the cartoons. So there's going to be haters. Who cares? It sounds like I missed out because it sounds like you watched it at the perfect time. And you liked it. You don't have whatever. And I'm really, what makes me happy about is there's the whole Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen show now in Disney. And I know that Hayden Christensen is in stuff in the Star Wars universe still. Like he's voicing and he's doing that stuff. And you know, he got hate, but I want to say I'm going to go to bat for Hayden. I'm going to go to bat for Hayden. If there's one takeaway, it's like I'm going to bat for him. I feel like I've worked with performers and I've worked with actors, and I know that you can get responses from them if you coach them, and it doesn't look like he was coached.
No.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like he was coached.
I just want to point out that you missed a great opportunity to make a callback.
Oh, yeah. No, tell me about it.
By saying you could have said you would have been jizzed about the music.
Yeah, I thought about it. I was in my mind.
Oh, no, I fucked that up. Sorry. I don't think about jizz like that.
I will.
I just don't. That hasn't connected. I forgot that already.
I will say Star Wars does a really good job of casting for characters in particular roles, but sometimes, most pertaining to the prequel trilogy, perhaps the performances aren't where they could have been, or perceived they could have been.
I got a great example for this.
Yeah,
Jimmy Smits.
Yeah,
is cast in this film.
100%.
Who's that?
That is Bail Organa.
Princess Leia's adopted father.
Okay.
Is in this film.
All right.
He doesn't give a great performance in this film.
Well, there's not much for him to really
because there's not much for him to do. But I'll tell you what, the dude shines in all the other Star Wars things he's been in because he's given so much more as the series goes on. You just got lucky casting him.
Same thing with Genevieve O'Reilly, right?
Right. Who's cast?
We'll talk about that
next week.
Yeah.
But she's cast for a deleted scene.
Like Natalie Portman, an amazing actress. Samuel L. Jackson, amazing actor. You have.
Ewan McGregor. To be fair, Sam Jackson was already a known quantity when he was casting this, right?
But like that, I think that even speaks to your point even more, is that look at the kind of performance you got out of Sam Jackson in Attack of the Clones, and you're like, that's Sam Jackson? Like he's...
I was at the DMV. Shit.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're reaching 220 now on this episode. So
no, not 220, we're at 2.
I was just making a callback to the runtime of this film.
Oh, but yeah.
Oh, did we just spend more time talking about
almost?
The movie
we have like another 19 minutes.
I don't count the end credits.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We have like 19 minutes to go.
Yeah, so I was just making a call.
Yeah. I was like, I had to check the time when you said, I was like, really? I was like, oh no, we're not.
I think Hayden Christensen. I know we're not gonna move too far into Revenge of the Sith, but that was the last one I watched in a theater.
Well, hopefully our other two co-hosts will be here next week, so you can join us again.
But I think Hayden Christensen's performance in Revenge of the Sith is way better.
Oh yeah.
So obviously it was a matter of time and effort, and not so much his. I just think he got a lot of hate, and I think he didn't deserve a lot of hate.
100%.
Hey, can I give a programming suggestion? I think every week we should have questions from the producer.
Yeah.
As part of the episode.
So far, my production has been relatively silent. I'm trying to stay behind the scenes and out of sight. It was only because of
he's really our Darth Sidious.
Set
if you think
in
about
the
it.
circumstances that I don't mind participating in.
Yeah.
But I'm
also more cats. We couldn't. We need one more cat appearance before we wrap out.
Traditionally, wrangling the cats is part of the production.
This is what happens.
Because I'm out of place. They're running the show. We have cats behind the camera.
Oh my. Who's running this circus? It's the cats.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Just to wrap up, I'm going to thank our two cameramen, our
Galaxy
and Toast.
What an
MVP.
episode this has been. I didn't really know how this was going to go. I still don't know how this is going, to tell you the truth.
I had a blast.
Yeah, I know. This is great. We were all over the place.
Wait, you know what? I got a question before we wrap up.
Of course.
What do you think about my 8 minutes?
We talked about the 8 minutes for
but you never told me your
episode.
Opinion on the 8 minutes. You love them, right? They're great. They're a great 8 minutes.
Yeah, I love the spectacle.
Okay,
I love
cool.
seeing the Jedi.
You mean the climax of the movie where they're fighting with lightsabers? Yeah, we like the climax of the movie.
Yeah, okay.
Where the themes come to a head and there's a lot of conflict. Oh yeah, I really liked that part. It was exciting. They did a great job. I was tense. I didn't know what was going to happen. By God, who's in charge?
Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.